I don't think imposter syndrome ever goes away. I think when I got asked to speak at the Advancing Women in Agriculture conference, I was thinking I was in like a little room. And they're like, no, you're on the main stage. I'm like, oh, I don't belong here. Fear's allowed to come along for the ride, but fear is not allowed to change the radio station, is not allowed to tell you where to go.
Welcome to the Purpose Power Brand Show, where we have conversations with leaders and brands transforming business into a force for good. I'm Amanda Stassen, business and brand strategist, entrepreneur, and founder of Bizu Innovation. I'm speaking with business builders and entrepreneurs, the dreamers and the doers who are proving that not only does purpose drive profit, but the future of our world depends on it. My guest today is Julie Thurgood-Burnett. She's the founder and CEO at Hereward Farms, a Canadian lavender grower and producer of all-natural, lavender-infused skincare and home products. In just 4 years, Julie's taken her local family farm from a crazy idea to a thriving business with products featured in the likes of Vogue and Vanity Fair magazine. That's no small feat for an entrepreneur or a small business startup. How did she do it? Get ready to be inspired and keep a notepad handy. Let's get to it. All right, Julie, thanks so much for being here. Super excited to dive into your story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we first, or the last time we chatted, I was sharing with you that it's always been my dream to have a lavender farm. And I'm talking to a woman who's living one of my dreams here. So it's like, I'm going to live vicariously through you a little bit, Julie.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? And it's funny because if you would have asked me if this is where I would have been, I would have laughed. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, actually, let's start there. Let's start with the origin of where Hereward Farms came from. Take us back to 2 to 3 years before the idea came to you. Like, were you in the farming business or cosmetics manufacturing? What were you doing?
So I owned a marketing agency.
Okay.
That
We're
was
like I'm living their life here, except I don't have the farm yet.
Yeah. You know what? If you want to buy it, it's yours. It's yours.
You never know.
Yeah. So we've always lived here. And we do cash crops. It's, so my husband's side of the family, 5 generations have been at this farm. I think they farm over 10,000 acres now. And, but we lived on the farm, but we just lived here. We didn't really do anything. And then when COVID hit, we weren't traveling, we weren't doing anything. And I thought, well, what would happen if we put lavender? Don't ask me. I've never been to a lavender farm. I don't know where I honestly, sometimes you just got to listen to that little voice in your head that goes, well, what's the harm? There's no harm. There's no money that I'm going to get lost. You know, I think the first 40 plants cost me maybe $100, maybe, right? So let's have fun. And I think that takes the pressure off of where it's going to kind of go. And then it's my husband's fault because I was very busy with the marketing agency because during COVID, everybody was busy spending grants and actually had time to do the things that they couldn't do. And so when everyone kept saying they were relaxed during COVID, I'm like, must be nice. We're a little crazy. But we did it on the side. And when I finished growing the lavender and taking courses and kind of put my energy into that, I made product because I did take cosmetology a million years ago at Humber College. Okay. I did nothing with it. I went into marketing instead. And so I kind of pulled out that thought process and just kind of got back into learning. And that kind of gives that point of you never stop learning. Like you have to keep, it's constant. And we sold out and Warranted, it was everyone I kind of knew that was just supporting what we were doing. And then my husband said, let's plant 3,000 lavender plants. And I was like, are you crazy? Like, where are we going with this? Like, this is fun, but I didn't have like an end goal. And away we went. And I think it was such a nice way of my kids being involved. My husband, we nicknamed him Mr. Lavender.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think
Mr. and Mrs. Lavender.
Yeah. Yeah. He, I think he was happy to be back in the land, right? Because he has an engineering firm. We lived here, but we didn't really do a lot. It was taken care of for us. So I think it was a really nice taking us back to that root
Nice.
of farming. And then, yeah, then it just grew. Then it just grew. Like, I don't even, we were talking about today, like, and I get emotional, with it because where did it start and kind of where does it keep going? And it just kind of blows my mind. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
yeah.
love that. And I love that there's an element of serendipity. Like you're in the right place at the right time. You're using what you have, some of your background that,
Yeah.
millions of years ago or whatever that you were at school and you had done some work in there. But basically it came from this idea of we have the space. I'm going to plant these plants. And then next thing you know, you have this whole line of what you now call farm to skin, lavender infused skin and home products. And
Yep.
I want to get into the how you did that and the mechanics of it maybe a little bit later. But
Yep.
what I want to know is when you reflect on it, what would you
Yeah.
describe as your why? What's the purpose or the why behind why you continue to build and what you continue to do?
So I think one of the big things that kind of came through when people started to walk through my doors was I got to care for people in a way of conversation or how I wrapped their stuff in store or how I shipped. And I still, like, I laugh, I handwrite every note still. Like 4 years later, you still get a handwritten note. And it's getting to a point where I'm like, I can't keep up, but
Right.
I don't want to lose that. And so I think my deep root for wanting people to feel like someone cares and not just another number, because that's kind of how we've evolved, in a sense, right? Like there's no
Yeah.
care when you go shopping, or you're just another number. And so I have some very deep rooted relationships with some of my clients that are 4 years old or someone that's just walked through my door now. And it really is the core of who we are, because we don't just offer product, we offer conversation. Like I have one client that Facebook messages me her order. I send her order before she even pays. She just sent me an early Christmas gift. Like that's my relationship. And that's what keeps me going, knowing that we're touching people and I get to do it and I get to do whatever I want in a sense to make people feel a little bit of love.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's your personal purpose. And it sounds like it's really woven into the business brand as well. Like how much of it is woven into it?
Yeah. And it's about sustainability and it's about clean beauty and a clean home. I didn't want us to be so brag worthy forward because it is such a touchy subject. Using the word organic is people don't necessarily believe it. And do you believe clean beauty? Do you believe it's going to do the things it's going to do? And I don't use all natural all the time. I use retinol products. And so my customers are the same way. So I didn't want to be like, this is what you have to be.
Right.
Add this in, you'll see the difference. But it was never in competition. It was kind of like how I think it makes people happy and better to use clean products and know that it's affordable and it's not just this blonde, blue-eyed blonde showing sustainability, like in that marketing.
Yeah.
And I want it to be affordable. I mean, I've had retailers go, you could charge double. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to.
Right.
Like, why?
Yeah.
It's at a good price, what I would pay for. So yeah.
I love asking the question about purpose and why, because really in entrepreneurship, which is hard on the best of days, without a real clear understanding of your purpose and your why, you can't weather the valleys and the storms that come with entrepreneurship. And Friedrich Nietzsche said, he had this really famous quote that I love. He said, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And I would add the what, not just the how, but the what that inevitably comes their way. So it sounds like the brand, the Hereward brand, is really built around building relationships and building those transparent conversations and treating people like human beings and not a number. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like everyone that walks through the door, it's a conversation. And I am sometimes when people don't want to have a chat, I'm kind of like, okay, I'll let you. But most times it is a full conversation, and so
Right.
for me to be in the store, I can't get any work done because that's like a lot of times people are coming to see me or have that conversation, or I'm not ready to let that go. I have a
Yeah.
million things to do because as an entrepreneur, you have a million
Yeah.
roles as you grow. But I think like that passion, if when you start a business, you got to have that passion. You've got to have that
Yeah.
grit, and it's not all about what you put in financially. A lot of it's
Yeah.
the energy. It's you've got to feel it in because when you're in that valley, because it goes up and down regularly, you've got
Oh
to
yeah.
withstand that storm,
Yeah.
and know that brighter days are ahead. I think there's a song about that,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and then when you hit that brighter spot, you go, yep, this is where I am, and this is why I'm doing. But you need that to get through the
Yeah.
next storm because it's
Okay.
always coming. It's always coming.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally. It's like peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of stats around the natural skincare
Mhm.
market. I mean, there's tons of them, but according to a latest report that I read, Straits Research talks
Mhm.
about the global organic skincare market being valued at around, I think it was like 10 billion in 2021, and it's predicted to reach like 21 billion by 2030. So this is great because it means that there's growing demand, but it also means that there's more and more entrants and more competition in the market. And a lot of entrepreneurs, if are scared off by that competition, believing that it's less opportunity and there's too much noise. But you dove right in, and I'm curious about your perspective on competition.
It's a good one. I joke I have no competition because I stay on my own path, right? So
Mm,
I don't pay attention to because we have two sides of the business. We have the lavender farm, but the agritourism is tiny because it's more about the product. And
mm,
so I stay on my path. I kind of stay out of the noise of what's that person doing because it's an easy place to get sucked into.
yeah,
I do pay attention to news. I get my Google News update in the morning to kind of go, oh, what's going on. But I listen. I think I listen more to trends. My customer, like a lot of products that I roll out, people will ask, I'll be like, hey, I'll put it on the list, and it may come to fruition, it may not. But I'm just doing my thing. Like I know I'm in a
mm,
multi-billion-dollar industry and I am like the smallest speck, but that doesn't make me afraid of like our growth.
right,
And
right,
I think with any business, like 2 years in, you kind of have an identity crisis of like, where am I going? And when
yeah,
our wholesale business blew up, I'm like, oh, this is where we need to be. Sure, we have a retail side, but wholesale's where it is for us. And we
mm,
share space with some big brands where I'm like, okay. But then there's that other side of it. Someone goes, would you love to be in Sephora? And I'm like, I don't know if that's like
mm,
how do you manage that soft gooiness that we have
right,
associated with our brand to then
right.
be so, because then it's out of my
Hands
hands.
off. Yeah,
And what happens to the quality? What happens to my
yeah.
brand? What happens to my baby? So I take every
Mm,
step. I don't have a goal. If people go, what's your goal in 2 years? I can't answer that because tomorrow it may change, right? Like
right.
we're putting in a cafe that literally was hey, we already serve tea sometimes. Why don't we just put in a cafe? And now I have a full kitchen in my store. So, like sometimes that's all it is. But
Yeah,
we are small spec and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with where we are. I think that's you have to be comfortable where you are,
yeah.
and not always trying to get to the next thing. Like,
And I love that because it really speaks to this idea of knowing where you're positioned
mhm,
and knowing what your differentiation is and
right.
providing that to the best of your ability. So how did you find your differentiator? Like how did you learn what that is?
That's a good question. I think it was never driven by finance. So it was never, when I'd sit in my tax meetings, which bore me to no, and they're talking to me and that's not why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's more about how can I get this into more people's homes effectively and continuing. Like, I love having new customers, but the ones that keep coming back are the ones that are continually helping my business grow. So my investment is in that. So you get lots of treats when you're one of those people, and I owe it to them. There's a circle. When you start up a business, you have very close people around you, but it's the ones outside of that kind of, when you launched your business, there's a new circle that lifts you up. And I wouldn't be anywhere without that circle at all. And when someone goes, did you ever look back and pat yourself on the back for everything that you've done? Because you're just always moving forward. And I said, no. And they're like, well, you need to do that. Like, that's your reverse bucket list. And I was like, oh, because I don't have like a bucket list, but the reverse bucket list, I'm like, wow. Like, and I get emotional about where we've been and what we did. Like, when we were on the front page of the Globe and Mail, I'm like, what? Like, what? Like that was never like, I want to be there. And so I think my appreciation, and that like, my husband says I don't brag enough, but I don't need to, because it just fills my heart that we're on the right path, and the energy we're putting into this, it's getting recognized, and so I don't need to step on a podium and scream it. It's already there. It's already speaking for me.
Right. Well, let's talk about what fueled your growth, though, because clearly you've done tremendously for the 4 years that you've been doing it. What would you say is the most important investment you feel you made in the business that really helped you guys to grow?
Marketing.
Okay.
Like, it was, I remember taking the growers, it was like a lavender growers course. and I'm watching all this stuff, and the technical stuff's going over my head, because that's my husband, right? But I'm like, I want to know. And the one thing they said is the biggest downfall of lavender farmers is they don't know how to market. I'm like, well, I owned a marketing agency. How hard can this be? And that's all I've done. Like, when someone says you don't have to do any marketing, I'm like, 80% of my job is marketing. And when I started out, I was hidden behind the brand, because I didn't want Hereward Farms to be because I had it, because I already had a business. Right? And so then someone goes, when are you coming out? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure I want to. I want Hereward Farms to have its own legs. But then it triggered me when a friend said, did you hear about a new lavender farm that opened? It's up near you. I went, that is me. And I thought, oh, I better. So I think putting your face forward and always being social and very real with my audience and relatable, and use social for what it is, to be social with it. I mean, it takes up a big chunk of my day, but marketing is probably the biggest investment in my time and money, to be completely honest, and the success of it, because it's always moving. And what's the next best thing that we can do to help promote and bring awareness? Because I see brands, and if you don't know about us or any other business, the marketing is the only way that you're gonna, right? So that it is. And then our product, like that, sometimes when someone goes, when are you gonna launch a new product? I'm like, it can take 6 months to a year, because I'm testing it. I may not like it. I got to source packaging. I have to do all these things. So it's not a constant, let's just pump out something new, or being driven by sales, right? So, a lot of retailers, every day you're getting an email that there's a sale, and you're like, well, what's the bonus to me if every day you're having a sale? We're not built on that. We're built on, you're going to buy when you need to buy. And if there's a sale, you'll be excited. So.
Right. So was there any specific marketing that you did that you felt really took it to the next level, or said differently, like, what would you recommend for entrepreneurs to really lean into?
I think the first stage is ensuring you have a fabulous website and the SEO is done effectively, because you can just put it up like a coat of paint. But if it's not the right paint, it's going to chip off. So, and it's not, you've put all that effort. And spending your money effectively. And that goes back to me owning an agency, right? So when we would see clients all the time that come in, they'd be like, oh, I spent $10,000 on this website. And I'm like, but how are you building this in stages? Or it wasn't allowing you to build in stages and you're starting all over again. So having that where you're always constantly adding. So the website, don't rely on social media ads. Don't spend the money if you don't have to. Like there's a lot of other engagement things that you can do. The thing that took us to the next level was doing retailer wholesale shows. Like that took us to a whole other level. And we stopped doing any consumer shows. That's not effective use of our time. Some people is.
Let's just break that down for a second, just because some people may not know what's the difference between a consumer show and a retail wholesaler show?
Like a consumer, like a market, farmer's market. And we started there. It was great because a lot of people still buy our products that found us there, but we moved on from that. And so a retailer show is like the canned gift show. So all the retailers come out and that's where they do their buying twice a year. Those two shows never out of my calendar. Like we are constantly there. We do very well. That's where we launched into the Terra greenhouses and Kind Matters. Like we got 6 locations. Like that was huge for us. Like I'm like, is this really happening? That like now we're in like as a chain. And it was because of that show, and it was because of the last day where everyone complains that it's so slow. No, it was great for us, but that took us to a whole other level and opened our eyes to, okay, where do we want to put our time and effort into? So
yeah. So on that topic of investing, you built Hereward. Was it purely self-funded, or did you also have outside investment? How did you shape the actual investment part of it?
So I literally took my check when I sold my agency and put it right into Hereward Farms. So I'm 100% self-funded. And I think as an entrepreneur, like I don't get a paycheck, like my staff all get a paycheck. I put everything back into it. I don't like it. Everything goes back in. But that's how we're able to grow or have buying power to do a lot of things to save money down the road. You have to be prepared for that because it's a scary leap. Like if someone's working full time to go, I'm not going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You don't need that added stress. You got to be sure that you've got that to kind of carry you.
Yeah.
Do I have a credit line? Absolutely. Like you need that to run a business, but that's not funding. It was just, I rolled everything in. So everyone's like, what'd you do with your money? I'm like, it went over there. Like it's back in. It didn't leave my hands kind of thing. So, there are grants and everything else. I think we did a digital Main Street grant, to help with some SEO, but that was really it. So there are a lot of grants. Like people ask me, they're like, what grants? And I'm like, here's a big long list, especially if you're a woman, there are tons of grants out there for you. So take advantage of them. Just be wary. There is a tax implication. You will have to pay tax on it, which no one really talks about, but at the end of the year, you don't want to get hit with that. But yeah, so it's, I'm in a different, I was lucky enough, to be able to sell something to start something else to fund it. So
yeah. There's pros and cons to self-funding versus getting outside investment. And you mentioned this idea of being comfortable where you are. And so there's this movement towards slower growth, as opposed to that hockey stick, fast growth. Yep. And I'd love to hear your perspective on slow growth.
Love slow growth. I don't, because it's great if you grow fast, but if you can't keep up to that, then it starts to break down. And we're still small batch. Like I'm still making product, up to 300, items per SKU. If I have an order that comes in, a wholesale order, it can wipe my whole store. So I have to manage that. And I don't, and my husband's like, oh, we need to do this and this. And I'm like, yeah, but then how do we meet that demand? Like what's getting sacrificed? Quality, the fact we can't get an order out within a week. Are we going to have to start, where I pride ourselves on a small business to not have order minimums for other small businesses. Cause it's tough when someone goes, I need a $500 order for your first order. Well, that's a lot of money. And for a retailer, do you move away from that because you give up? So I like slow growth because then I can plan. And it's funny because as in personal, I'm a rock jumper across the water. Like I don't hesitate. But when it comes to this business, I kind of sit back and go, and I've learned some valuable lessons. Like I went to a trade show, consumer one, that cost me, in the end, I thought I was going to make $50,000 that weekend because of everything that they talked about. And I made $300 and I had invested 10. Oof. So that hurt like that. And I remember crying, and my husband goes, let's just pack up. And I go, no, we're going to get through this weekend. We've learned a very valuable lesson and we will never be in this again. And I've never spoken about that trade show because I don't want to trash it. Yeah. But when someone tells me they're going, I'm like, please don't. But it's and I think as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of opportunists to get your money or to participate. So it's navigating that too. Like, that sounds really great. You can give me 5,000 new followers. Well, that's not, it's not organic. It's going to kind of backfire on you. But there's all these opportunities. It's like the late night TV was, where they, all these magic commercials come on at late night. Yeah. It's like that sometimes, and you have to navigate that. And it's a lot. What's the right move? What's the right influencer? What's the right, what's the right, I had a PR agency at one point, but they weren't telling my story the way I don't want to just talk about my products. There's us and our story. And so we've been without a PR agency for 2 years and we've done better, but I'm able to tell my story a little bit better. Right. Yeah. So, so just it's being careful how you spend that money. Yes. And if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Yeah. And navigating that is really, it's sharky waters out there. Yeah. A little bit. Yeah.
And I'm so glad you said that, because there's such a focus on scaling and scaling fast and growing fast. And in that place, you sometimes feel like you have to take those shortcuts. So when somebody comes in and says, and I love the example you gave about the followers, there's tons of those opportunists, if you will, that say we can give you 100,000 followers, just accept whatever. Yeah. And at the end of the day, slow growth allows you to make better decisions. Like, it actually allows you to pause, and the pause is good sometimes. You want to take advantage of opportunities, but you also want to do them in a way that's wise, right? Yes. So I love that you said that. I want to go back to something that you said earlier, actually two things, but I'll start with this one. So founder entrepreneurs struggle with like many, many things. And one of them is imposter syndrome. And so they throw all their energy and focus on building and operating the business. But really, at the end of the day, what they're doing is really what you described as hiding behind the brand. I'd love for you to talk about your experience with imposter syndrome and actually hiding behind the brand. What was that? And what were you really doing there?
Yeah. I don't think imposter syndrome ever goes away. I think, like when I got asked to speak at the Advancing Women in Agriculture conference, I was thinking I was in like a little room, and they're like, no, you're on the main stage. And I'm like, oh, I don't belong here. Like I've been to the conference, and so that self-doubt, which I think is also grounding, because I think if you think that you are there, you've lost something. Like, right. I think you always have to have a little bit of it.
Okay. Yeah.
A little bit, right? Elizabeth Gilbert, in her book, I'm going to quote, but I'll do a horrible job of it, is because it feeds into that imposter syndrome. She said, fear is allowed to come along for the ride, but fear is not allowed to change the radio station, is not allowed to tell you where to go, but you have to know it's here. Yeah. And I've made some leaps that I'm like, I don't know. And sometimes it's been good and sometimes it's been bad. I still and I'll go back to that point. I don't know whose life I'm living. Like, I don't, it's all come together, and I don't think anything in my life has been this easy, like working for someone or, sure, the agency was, but it was different. Like, this is my baby, and it's a little bit different, in so many emotional ways. And I'm always going to have imposter syndrome. I always am, because I never thought I was the smartest person in the room. Now I am. and it's still, sometimes I doubt myself and think, no, I know what I'm doing. Like, but it gives you a new, renowned, like, confidence. But, and if you don't keep your feet on the ground, I think you lose it. And then, I
Right.
don't know, but staying in your path. I always say it all the time. I'm like, just stay in your path.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know, you can, like, don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Like, you'll know, you can get inspiration, or you can do whatever you want, but just don't let that drive your decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, kind of in hindsight, why is getting out from behind the brand one of the most important things that a founder can do for their business?
Because it's social and connecting with people, and it's such a way to communicate without just telling you what I'm doing by, like, here's my product and here's what it does, and even when I'm social, I usually make kind of funny videos, or, you know, or it's not just about my product. And sometimes I do struggle. I'm like, should I do a video on showing you how to put the lotion on? But you know how to put, like, you don't need to see me put lotion all over my body. But I am, it's funny because I'm going to tell you a funny story, because women can sometimes be tough. So, I did a post on a Sunday. Sundays are my day off. Okay. And I was by the pool.
Yeah.
And I was taking a picture like this. So I was in my bathing suit. And so I was like, you know, you work on, you work off, but as an entrepreneur, you're never really off.
Right.
And she told me I was so off brand and how disgusting it was that I was in a bathing suit. And I was like, and it hurt my feeling, where I was like, oh my gosh, like, should I have not posted? And I thought, no, now you've fired me up, because I'm actually human. And I actually, like, so now we joke all the time when I do hashtag on brand, and it's not anything to do with my business. But she fired me up, because I was like, you're tearing me down because you think I'm not on brand, but this is my brand. Like, I am part of this brand.
I am the brand.
I am. There's people, you know, they get little glimpses into my life, and there is a fine line, right? Because if you start unleashing on social media as a brand, like, you start bringing more personal stuff that really has nothing to, that's a tough one. And sometimes brands, you get into that. No one wants to hear it. Do it on your personal page. But I think people like to connect, especially when that there's someone real behind something, and it gets lost if you don't. I probably, most of our success has come from just being real and being out in the open. And here we are, like, and I haven't really, you know, TikTok can be a little mean, and they haven't been mean to me yet. So I will take it. I will take it. Yeah.
So what tips would you have for, you know, an entrepreneur who's struggling with, you know, getting out from hiding behind the brand? What would you say is a way to start?
Be your authentic self. Like, even just on social, like, start showing those glimpses. And when I used to do the videos of myself, it's very overwhelming, because you're critiquing yourself and you're criticizing, and that imposter syndrome's in your head going, you look ridiculous. You got to throw that out the window, and it still has to be relative to your business. And I like to share things, and it kind of rolls into, because I think influencers have changed. It's not just the opening the package and tapping on the box. Right. There's more of that experience side of it. And if those influencers haven't evolved, they're left behind. And those are the ones that are messaging you, instead of a lot of time. And so I do share my experiences. Like, I was out for lunch today, and so I tagged the restaurant I was in, because I thought, you know what? I don't even know how many followers, 9,000 followers. Maybe some of them are in Burlington. Maybe some of them want to eat at this delicious restaurant we've been at. That shows real that I'm actually doing something, and I actually eat, and that I'm actually promoting another business. And that kind of goes into collabs. Like, I collab with a lot of businesses, and I share that a lot. And picking those people that you collab with have to have the same energy or the same goal in mind, right?
Right.
So,
right.
But yeah, you got to get out of that. You really have to be you, and it can't just be emails. It's social, but you've got to keep it where it's still attached to your business, and it's still, and you can have fun. Don't be afraid of it, but look, if you look at your feed, and this is what I say, because we used to call this at McDonald's the burger brain, because people forgot that there's a world outside McDonald's when I worked there.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to step out of our business to go, well, what do I like to see? And look at what you follow and look at why you're following someone and why are you following, like Neil Patel, because you like his information and you like hearing him talk. It's not just a bunch of posts that are quoted and that's what you're reading. So I always tell people, look at what you're following and what you like, because probably that's what your audience is going to like too, especially if you're in that category or in that area. But it's a lot of it's research for me. I'm like, oh, I really like that. There's a furniture antique place I follow in Missouri that I wish it was here because I'd buy everything in their store, but I love the way they put everything together. And so you kind of get inspired by that to go, oh, I love all your videos, and it has nothing. It's not goofy, and it's not just them mimicking words and doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just the quality, and you've showed me in a cute little snippet, and I get a taste, and I can relate to what you're offering me, and it's moved on. You have respected my time.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
And, speaking of the whole coming out from hiding behind your brand, you are the face of the brand, and you've done a phenomenal job with PR. And, in just a short time, you've had features in Vogue magazine and Vanity Fair and so many more. What is your secret?
If I
Because you said you had a PR agency and now you're doing better without them.
Yeah. I think it's just, it was luck where Vanity Fair reached out to us first. And then we've just maintained that relationship. It is pay to play. Like some of the things are, like being in like that Globe and Mail feature and the Toronto Star, that was not a paid feature. That just happened from an interview of exposure. So every little ounce of exposure is great, because the more you get out there, I check all the time. Like I'm Googling Hereward Farms all the time to see what's getting picked up or where else can I so it's a lot of work. And you've got to learn how to write press releases, and thank goodness for Chat GPT, because if you're an entrepreneur and you're not using Chat GPT, you have to edit everything. So please, everyone, don't just copy and paste. But it's a good start, and it's such a great tool. But press releases have helped, and probably our community involvement. So we give a lot back to the community. I don't hesitate if someone asks me to participate in anything that's helping to raise money for anything in our community. But it is perseverance, and it's knowing which ones are good ones and which ones aren't.
Yeah.
And that is a formulation that I don't even know so what fits, what feels right. I've spent money on ads that haven't done anything. One of my big ones is the billboard. It does amazing for me. I'm never giving up that billboard. But if you would have asked me when I owned the agency, if a client said, I'm going to do a billboard, I'm like, really? Like, what are you going to get from that? So sometimes the ideas stick to the wall. So I don't have a clear answer to go, this is how you're going to get to where we have been.
Yeah.
I have just taken advantage of opportunities that fit and align. We used to work with a lot of influencers. I now work with influencers that don't even ask us for money anymore. They just want product. And they do these amazing features, and I'm actually more honored than them going, here's your $1,000 check to talk about me.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Like once you kind of overcome that, you get a lot of people that just like, when people want to come to the fields, I don't have to pay them. They're doing the advertising for me now because it's helping their brand.
Yes.
So they do get spoiled when they get here. They get big bags of stuff, but there's no financial gain either way. Right.
Right.
But it's finding people that are, and I ask them, I'm like, what brands do you represent? Because sure, I could hop on any influencer and then find out, oh, they just work with brands that are not clean, or so it doesn't really fit, or it's not my audience. Right. And I say no more than I say yes.
Okay.
With that. And so we don't do a lot. It's me, and we do social ads, and but I do a lot of my writing blogs and SEO is probably my biggest where it gets out there. So when you look up products that were coming up, like it's a lot of underneath legwork. So yeah.
I like how you have articulated that it's a lot of trial and error. And it's trying stuff, seeing what sticks to the wall, seeing what kind of return you get, not being afraid to put things out there and having the courage and the boldness to write a press release and say, hey, we've come up with something, and then following up and building those relationships. I think there's a lot of persistence that goes into things like getting publicity. So I think that's a really, really good point that you've highlighted.
And I take the same angle with products.
Yeah.
Like when I launch a new product, there's not like a huge investment where I'm kind of like, okay, let's try it out. And some things I think are like, okay, that's really cute. And then it takes off and I'm like, oh, that surprises me. It's the same with marketing for me where I'm like, okay, let's try it out. Let's see what happens. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Right. So
yeah. Listen, this has been really great. But before we wrap up, I ask all of our guests this, what 2 practical tips would you share that would help leaders and entrepreneurs purposefully accelerate their business and brand growth today?
I think staying in your own path. I'm not going to say it like you have to be authentic. And if you lose that, if you just start up something because someone else is doing it, you better do it different. Like I use the restaurant analogy. There can be 50 restaurants in a town, but everybody's doing it different. They all serve the same thing. They serve food and drinks. Yeah. So how are you doing it differently? And how are you making it that experience so when someone walks through the door, they're always choosing you? They have to eat, right? So staying in your path, like just don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Like I could be surrounded, my whole feed could be surrounded by my competitors and then I'm consumed with, well, they're doing this or they're doing this or they're copying me or no, I don't have the energy for that. Collab and partnerships, huge. And if you are in a community, whether you're in a small town or a big, because there's still inner communities, if you're not part of that, you're going to get forgotten. You are just going to be another business. And so that emotional side to be community and linked to the community, you got to give back. You absolutely, I think the awareness from in our community was giving back and being part of that and being very present. And then I think those, like the community and the stay on your own path. Those are the 2 big things. Like aside from finances and marketing, those 2 things. Yeah.
No, that's really great. I think the way that you describe this idea of staying in your own path is be true to who you are.
Yes.
Lean into what is your value proposition, what is your differentiator, what makes you different, what makes people choose you. I like the way that you said that. And then being involved and engaged in that community is a great place to start telling your story and then having people learn about you. And it yields so much. Yep. So where can people learn more and buy from Hereward Farms? What are your social links?
Yep. So Hereward Farms on Instagram and Facebook. And then herewardfarm.com is our website. And we also have a boutique that's open all year round on our farm. So you get to experience the whole thing.
That's awesome. And you're just like 2 hours from Toronto?
An hour and a half on a busy kind of day. Like we're in between Orangeville and Fergus, which there is amazing. I was at a tourism meeting yesterday and I was explaining, I'm like, it's great because people are coming up for a day and there's so much between here and Toronto.
Nice.
And people continue on to Elora and they make a whole day of it. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Julie, thank you so much for sharing your story, your experience, and your insight. And in case you haven't heard this today, thank you for living and sharing your purpose. The world is made better because of it. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Purpose Power Brand Show. I love having these conversations with business leaders and entrepreneurs. Thanks for being here with me. I hope you learned something new and insightful. I know I did. I love what Julie talked about, staying in your own lane and not worrying what your competition is doing. That's about knowing who you are and what makes you different and unique and doubling down on that instead of just following what others are doing. This is the meat and potatoes of brand building. It's the stuff that becomes your superpower when you lean into it. She also talked about this idea of hiding behind the brand, which is something a lot of founders and entrepreneurs do, sometimes just as a way to deal with feelings of imposter syndrome. Sure, it can be challenging. As an entrepreneur, you're already juggling so much. You're building the business, you're operating the business, but the benefits of letting people see a glimpse of the human being building this brand is huge. Remember, people don't fall in love and have a relationship with businesses. They fall in love with people. So you got to let them see you so they can fall in love with you and your brand. So thanks again for being here with me. Until next time, keep moving forward, keep building, keep growing, keep sharing your vision. The world needs courageous entrepreneurs and leaders just like you now more than ever. Bye for now.